This is the KnightShift podcast, powered by Black and Gold Banneret, your home for news and analysis from all UCF Knight sports. The KnightShift starts now. And we welcome you to this edition of KnightShift, special edition, as we will preview the 2024 UCF men's soccer season. The 19th ranked Knights will open their season on Thursday night against Mercer at home. Coming up, Bryson Turner and I will preview this season. You will hear from UCF men's soccer head coach Scott Calabrese, as well as UCF defender Anderson Rosa, who was recently named Sun Belt preseason defender of the year pick, as well as UCF goal scorer great Lucca Dourado on this show. Bryce and I will break down a fascinating, intriguing, exciting, tough 2024 schedule for the Knights and what the outlook might look this year coming up on this edition of KnightShift. Of course, you can follow us on the YouTube channel. Subscribe there. You get to all the interviews, post games of all UCF sports, as well as some interviews that we record during the week and much more, as well as, of course, follow blackandgoldbanneret.com for all the latest news in UCF, as well as on social media. Of course, we did a UCF women's soccer preview recently, Bryson, and now it's the men's turn.
Yes, indeed, Eric. And this is going to be a very exciting team to preview, especially after coming off of last season, where this team became the first one in UCF history to reach the number one ranking. Unfortunately, it sort of ended a bit bittersweetly because they ended with 3 straight losses. First, the regular season finale on Halloween against James Madison, then a home match in the Sun Belt tournament against South Carolina, and then an NCAA tournament matchup with Vermont. So despite I would say the objectively great season men's soccer had last year, with the way it ended, this team already, from the way last season ended, looks to be a team that was going to be hungry to end it in a better way the following year. And I think the actions that Scott Calabrese took over the offseason, as well as the actions of the players, detail as much.
No doubt. It was a unique year for last year for UCF. They got to as high as ranked number 1 in the polls at one point for the first time in program history, was 45 minutes away, Bryson, from winning the Sun Belt Championship. Unfortunately, they would falter to James Madison and then lost in the conference tournament opening round to South Carolina in the Sun Belt, and then eventually in the opening round of Vermont in overtime. So now the big question would be, how does this team respond after the way things ended, as you referred to? That was some of the topics that Scott Calabrese, the head coach, addressed recently on UCF Men's Soccer Media Day, talking about last year's finish, the outlook for this year, and much more. Here now is Scott Calabrese. Well, Coach, talk about now year 2 in the Sun Belt, which turned out to be one of the strongest conferences in the sport. When you look back at last year, what do you take away from that going into year 2 now here in the Sun Belt?
Yeah, I think when, I take a lot of lessons away from last year, specifically around the teams that we play in the Sun Belt. That conference is, I think it's in the top 2 to 3 conferences. I think the teams that we end up playing, the top teams, and I'd say, this year will be no different. I want to say there's five teams in the top 25. Last year, 3 of those teams were in the top 5 for quite a while. So the standard of the conference, the quality of the conference is very high. The level of players in the conference is very high, and I think the level of coaching in the conference is exceptional. So it's incredible challenges, difficult road trips as well. Those are not easy places to get to. The environments are great, and so we walk away from that. Now we have an understanding of how each team is gonna play. I think that's helpful. We know what to expect. So as we move forward into this year, probably a few less surprises in terms of what teams are gonna look to do against us and what we're gonna be up against.
What does it mean to you to have Lucca and Anderson back for one more go round, especially in Anderson's case after being drafted?
Yeah, last dance. No, it's amazing what these guys have meant to the program. I can remember, it doesn't seem like it was all that long ago that we were trying to figure out how do we get these guys out of Brazil and into the U.S. because they were trapped in Brazil during COVID, and it was a real challenge. And they, with our help and their resourcefulness, we overcame that. We were able to get them here, and that was a Sweet 16 run, right, in their freshman year. So now here we are. Seems like 8 years later, but it's only really 4 years, guys, right? So they're incredible human beings. And I think over the years, UCF has meant more and more and more to them each year. They've invested so much for these guys to come back when they have opportunities to move on and take another step. I think they want to give back to this program. We want to help elevate them as well. So I'm so excited to have those guys this season.
How have you reacted, and how have you seen your team leaders react to the way last season ended?
Yeah, I think we have to learn our lessons from last season, and we had reached an incredibly high level last season where, if you take a look, the national champion was Clemson, right? On day one, we beat Clemson, and we deserved to beat Clemson. We were playing against Marshall and West Virginia. West Virginia ends up in the Final Four. So you sit there and say, okay, we reached this really high level. Now, how do we make sure that we're at this same high level at the end of the season, right? And I think there's lessons for players in that. I think there's lessons for coaches in that. And so, we have to make sure that when we hit the real business end of the season, that we're at our best, right? We're playing our best football. We're healthy. We're not fatigued or not overly fatigued, and that we can still absolutely perform at our best. And, we'll have lots of conversations throughout the season about how we're gonna achieve that.
Yeah. How much of that comes down to player leadership too?
Yeah, I think, it's actually one of the strengths of this team, in my opinion, right now, is that we have a real strong group of leaders, and everyone leads in their authentic way. Some people are going to be more vocal. Some people are going to be more like interpersonal, arm around. But I think more than ever, we're pulling in the same direction, everybody. We're going to meet challenges, right? That I'd imagine there's going to be difficult games where, whether we get the result or don't get the result, like, are we going to be able to stick together? And I think it's going to come down to our leadership group. Two of the guys in the room right now are going to be a big part of that, and I have no doubt that we'll handle all those situations.
4 Sun Belt teams are ranked in the top 25. You're one of those. 3 of those are ahead of you. Is that part of the fun and the chase to run those down?
Yeah, so I feel like it's always good to chase something, right? And to have something in your sights that you can go and get. I think the rankings, they're not going to be our focus. I think the rankings are an outcome and a benefit of playing really well over time. They're someone else's opinion, and so they're not as meaningful to us as a lot of the things that we'll consider, like, how are we judging ourselves, right? That'll be how others judge us, and they have so much less information about what's going on in our program and how we work every day. So the rankings have, they make us feel good, but we won't focus on them, if that helps.
You bring in 4 new faces in the back line, whether it's from another college or internationally. What can you tell us about this back line, especially considering that Zane graduated last year?
Yeah, I'm excited. I think our back line's going to be a huge strength of ours. I think we have a number of players who are experienced, We could put a back line out right now of guys who were all here last year, and it could be, in my opinion, one of the best back lines in the country. Because we actually did put that back line out a couple times, right? If you think Anderson on one side, Timo on the other, Jonas and Arne, right? You could put that back line out again, and that back line was here previously when we were playing at a high level. So I think, I'll also say the new players are going to add something too. Right away, there's some older experienced guys who I think are going to compete for positions in that back line, and they're going to make us better, and they bring different things to how we would play, right? Zane was 6'4", really physical player, big presence, competitor, and I think you'll find, all right, we don't necessarily have a guy that's just like Zane, but we have guys who coming out with the ball are going to be really clean and very, very good picking a pass. You're going to see some guys that are going to be very athletic who could potentially play back there. And so there's some options, I think, that we'll have. And this is part of what preseason's for. Let's evaluate the players and see who is it that's going to, be able, and it may change game to game, but who's going to make the back line better, right? And, it might be that one game it's better suited to a certain player and a certain type of player. It might be another game that, no, okay, this is actually a better person to play in this position. So I'm excited to see kind of what those options are.
You also have that switch in the midfield. Saku, the sensation that he was when pro in Finland. AJ graduated. You bring in Sora and Javi from Spain. What was it like now with this kind of switch over the midfield?
Yeah, I think that's an area that the preseason is going to be really good for us to take some time and to see which players are going to connect best in that area. We have Giannis back, of course. Usman Ba, he's actually had a lot of injuries, but now he's back and he looks great. Javi's a new player in there. There's some options in there. And so I think that's what's going to be really interesting. And Robbie and AJ, Robbie is a player that I don't know if I'll ever or we'll ever find a player exactly like Robbie. I've never seen a player cover more ground in the midfield to just absolutely stomp out difficult moments for our team. So, when you get different players, the idea is, okay, we're not going to have another Robbie Soranellis. So what's our midfield going to be like? And it's going to be different. And then how do we best organize ourselves and play the best version that we have with the player profiles that we have?
Seeing that non-conference schedule, you end up getting started with Mercer NCAA tournament, Seattle U NCAA tournament, Wake Forest, FIU. Like overall, 9 opponents on your schedule this year were in the NCAA tournament. So especially 100%. After last year, what's it like to kind of have that schedule kind of
overwhelming majority in the top 25?
Yeah, that's by design, and I think when you play elite teams and teams that are used to winning and competing at the highest level, you're going to get better. And so it doesn't help us, in my opinion, to play teams that are not going to test you, not going to put you on your edge, because when we get into conference, we're absolutely going to be tested. And to know, okay, what do we need to get better at? That's revealed day one. You play Mercer, you have to deal with Mercer, and they're very good at what they do, right? And then you're going to have another challenge against Seattle. You're going to have a totally different challenge against Wake. And all of those challenges are going to help us learn a lot about ourselves, and we're going to get better. Bottom line, when we're done with that non-con schedule, we're going to know things that are important, and we're going to train them, and our guys are going to understand them, and we're going to understand, okay, where do we need to get better? What level do we need to be at? And that's going to be really important for a conference schedule.
A majority at home, and when you got here first, you play a lot of marquee games on the road. Now you're starting to get those at home, fresh off a year where you had record attendance, seasoned attendance, some single game attendance. That doesn't mean to have those marquee teams coming here.
I think it's really exciting, and I think this is part of the next step for the UCF soccer program, and that is like let's get the Wakes of the world here, right? Let's those should be another one next year, who I won't say until we get that contract signed. But let's get these teams here, because Orlando's this incredible soccer market. I mean, you see it with Orlando City. You see we pack out Barca, Man City. There's so many people interested. There's so many club teams and youth organizations in this area who just who love it. And let's create an incredible environment for them and get those young players as well in the community and the students in the stands, and let's inspire them.
Hit history last year by being the first UCF team to reach number one, but between that and the difficulty of this schedule, like what is it like to kind of come off of that thing? I don't know if I want to say expectations, but I mean, you're coming off of like arguably one of the biggest seasons in program history, and then you have this sort of schedule. So what does that kind of do for you as a coach? You talk about taking this program up a notch.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it exactly, right? So we have been continuously trying to get better, right? And that's at the individual level, what our guys are trying to do every single day. It's why we train. It's what we're trying to do as a staff. We're trying to take steps forward. And I think that's, no matter what, that's my motivation. How do we continuously improve? And, you can't spend too much time thinking about, okay, what happened last week or 2 weeks before. You really have to have that viewpoint, like, all right, we're going to need to take steps forward, and this is one of them.
Who would you say has made the biggest leap forward over this offseason? From
Preseason, I think it's too tough for me to say like one player. I think in the last 4 years, I think the two guys that are in the room are huge. That's who I'd point to say that these guys have taken massive steps forward in so many ways. When they came in as freshmen, to now where they're big leaders in the team, and both have improved in the football part too, in terms of becoming better players. And so I would say those two are guys that, to me now, I'm excited for them for this year, where they can take everything that they've learned and how they've grown, and now put it to use in their final season.
You lost your number 2 keeper to transfer. How would you evaluate your depth now?
I think we've done really well. The position, we brought in a goalkeeper now to join us for this fall. He came in the summer. I think he's got a great background, and in the few days that I've seen him, he looks great, Timo. But then Shane, who is a local guy, FKK, I'll tell you, in the spring he was neck to neck with Wanby, and had really, he got 50% of the games during that spring and did an amazing job. And that's what you want. You want players pushing each other, and I think Wanby has in turn also responded to that, and is motivated and focused and ready to go, knows what he needed to get better at from last fall, and I think really is addressing that, and he looks great right now.
What was the biggest thing this team needs to do between now and kickoff of game 1 against Mercer?
I would say, I'll tell you what the guys did do already. They put in some work. When they come back for Summer B, they don't just go to class and hang out and get to know each other. They put in work. They put in work in the weight room with J House, our strength coach. They put in work on the field, and they do it. And they lead each other, and they hold each other accountable. And so they've done that. So I think they've come in fit. I think they've come in now, rather than just doing running, they've done a lot of it through their own organization and playing. So now you're soccer fit, which is helpful. And now I think it's, how do we bring this group together in different ways? How do we bring this group together from a football perspective is probably the biggest thing. And that that requires the coaches. Everything that they could do on their own, they did, and they did it at an exceptionally high level. And now it's, all right, how do we really get organized between now and then? How do we understand the different game moments? What should we be doing when we're counterattacking? And, how should we be setting up when we have possession and we're in the opponent's final third and we need to make sure we're not vulnerable to the counterattack? All of those different phases and situations, that's really what it's about now, because the guys have already put in a massive amount of work to be ready for this point.
All right, that was Scott Calabrese from the media day. Bryson, you and I were there. What was your impression of what Coach Calabrese had to say in that media day? And I know you had a chance to talk to him after the exhibition match that UCF took place as well against Stetson.
Yes, Coach Calabrese strikes me as a man on a mission. He knows what he had last year. I think he very much knows. And so, if anything, I think he is very determined to finish what this program started last year, because like you said, they were 45 minutes away from finishing the regular season with the number one ranking, and I'm sure that the following everything that happened basically after that, he is really thinking of over and over about, and how can he avoid that again. And sometimes college soccer, though, is hard. Sometimes luck can kind of come into play, and sometimes that can happen. So what do you do to avoid that this time around? And so what I think the biggest thing that I take away from Coach Calabrese is that the actions that he took all point to the fact that he knows this team can compete on a national level this year, and that he is just trying to make the necessary adjustment, minor tweaks, to make sure that this program is on the same level as last year's.
Let's talk about this 2024 team. They return a pretty good core from last year's team. Of course, two big storylines that certainly was the fact of the return of Lucca Dourado and Anderson Rosa, Bryson, despite the fact that Anderson Rosa was drafted in the MLS, he decided to come back.
Yes, he did. The fact that he went in the 14th pick of the second round of the MLS Super Draft to the Colorado Rapids, but he ended up electing to come back. And he was also spoke at Media Day. And one thing that really struck with me with what he said is he came back because he wanted to get trophies. And UCF did not get that. They didn't get the Sunbelt regular season trophy, lost that because of James Madison. They didn't get a tournament trophy because they lost early in the tournament. And then, of course, NCAA, they didn't even win a game in the NCAA tournament. So it's clear that Anderson Rosa, I think, has a very similar hunger to that of Scott Calabrese because this is a team that is able to get trophies, and they didn't last year. And so I think there's this air of unfinished business with him and coach alike.
There's certainly some unfinished business from Rosa, who talks about that in the media, back in Media Day, as well as playing one more year with a guy he's very familiar with. He's been for a long time, and Lucca Dourado. Here now is Anderson Rosa.
You got drafted by the Colorado Rapids there, so what brought you back to UCF for one last ride?
It was very exciting, seeing my name pop up in the screen, getting drafted. It's the dream when you come to college. You want to get drafted, you want to get that to the next level. But I feel like we left some unfinished business last year. Even though we got number one ranked, we didn't get to all goals, which was winning titles. And that was the way I arrived here. My freshman year, we won the conference. It was a different conference, but we won the conference. We won the tournament of the conference as well, got to Sweet 16. So I feel like I still owe UCF a little bit more. I still have more to give to the school.
Tell me a little bit, what have you worked on your game, and how did getting drafted, what did it inspire you to work on some things, aspects of your game to be a better player this year?
Yeah, when you get to college, I was a freshman here, and then I had a lot to learn from the older players and stuff. So you get the experience from the older players, what I bring from my high school, and when I just show around, when you get drafted, obviously 4 years later, you have learned a lot already, but you still have more to give. I feel like I've been always a great attacking and offensive weapon for the team. But I think defensive, I have worked a lot on myself, and I've been more and more giving to the team as the years have gone.
How have you seen this team respond since the way last season ended the way it did?
Very well, very well. You know, the first 24 hours are always the most difficult ones. Everyone said we lost to Vermont in the tournaments, but then we have to bounce back. You know, there's no time to be like crying and thinking about the past. You know, we had a new season now, a new chance to prove ourselves, to prove to the conference, to prove to the country what we can do.
You mentioned a very unselfish attitude of feeling like you owe UCF more. When you look at your teammates, do you feel like that's a common thread? Do you feel like other guys feel that same way about wanting to give more to this program?
Yes, for sure. When I see the team, I think just for seeing that everybody comes to Summer B, which is not something that every school does, coming back earlier, a month earlier than everybody else in training. I think it shows a lot of the character of the team, where everybody's expecting from the others and for ourselves as well to give to the school and to achieve the highest possible levels in the school.
Speak of the defense, the fellow, we talked last year often about your back line and all the shutouts and the great defense pride that you took in it. Tell me about some of the faces there you're getting used to, going to be playing with you alongside there and trying to protect one, help Wanvi out and goal.
Yes, as coach said, we have the same background, back line from last year. If they want to, the coaches want to. We also have new guys, which are able to bring a lot to the table, to the team. But we train, we do our parts, and then let the coaches solve it. I know it's a great headache for the coaches to be able to have 8-9 players who can all do the same job, and at the end of the day, everybody wants to defend UCF the best way possible.
Who among these new faces that you found in the back line that you could see, taking a step up and having a really good year this year?
I think that's a tricky question because everybody is able and wants to show a lot, but I think maybe the guys who have already experience in college, such as Alex Smith, who just came from Georgia Southern, is a player who can show a lot, but also some players were injured last year, so they also want to show a lot, Like Jonas got injured in the middle of the season, Arne as well. They didn't get to play as many games as they wanted to. So it's a question that I think everybody wants to show the best way they can.
Coach talked about your growth in the last 4 years. How have you seen him grow as a person?
I think every time I talk about Scott, it's a guy that it's not only a coach, but he's also a dad for the whole team. When we talk about this team being a family, he's the big person in there, brings everybody together. Sometimes he has to be the coach and, complain and talk more serious, but at the same time, he brings us together in the down moments, after the Vermont, everybody was sad. He brings us together, does activities so we can make everybody comfortable, when you go here. That's one of the reasons I came back. Scott's being here, the coaches, not only Scott, but the whole staff, it's a great family for us.
What do you feel when coming off of last year being the first UCF team to reach the #1 ranking, and coming into this year where a majority of your opponents made the NCAA tournament this year?
Yeah, I think the #1 ranking is just a number. The #1 in the screen, the ESPN screen, doesn't play at the end of the day. We are the one playing, and then when we went to Clemson, we beat them, we're not ranked. And then at the end of the year, we are #1, but we didn't win the tournaments. So the numbers don't really play. We need to get there. It's 11v11, and everybody has the ability to win games.
You talked about coming back. How special is it that Lucca also came back and you two, have grown together throughout this run?
Yeah, me and Lucca have been together for 6 years now. Not only here, but also in high school, we've been together. It's a great dude. It's exciting. It's a dude that we always push each other, because I know what he's capable of. He knows what I'm capable of. And we also know each other on the field. I know exactly where he wants the ball. He knows how I like to play, so it helps each other a lot. At the same time, outside of the field, I'm pushing him. I know after training, I'm like, Lucca, you can do better than this. The same to me. So me and Lucca, it's a great partnership on and off the field and through life.
Considering, the Brazilian community that resides here in Orlando, what has it been like to play here over these last years with yourself and your fellow countrymen in Lucca?
It's amazing. It's very good. When you're away from home, you're always homesick and stuff, feeling like you miss that part of your culture. But when you see that you have a roommates, I think in my case, that is Lucca, teammates, the Brazilian partnership, and also in Orlando, you have a lot of Brazilians here. Some Brazilians come to the game, and after the game, they stick around and talk to us. So it's very good to feel that we're not alone in here.
What is the difference between 2023 Anderson Rosa versus 2024 Anderson Rosa?
I would say more hunger. I always want to win, Last year I wanted to win, this year I want to win even more than last year. I know myself, I know what I can give to the school, to this program, and I know we can do even better.
Brazil women or U.S. on Saturday. It's Marta's last international game.
You know what's gonna happen. You already know what's gonna happen. Brazil's gonna win the gold.
Well, what would you say is the biggest thing that this team needs to do between now and kickoff of the first match against Mercer?
I think not focus a lot about Mercer right now. Our first game is Saturday against FAU away in a preseason match. That's our first game. That's our 100% focus. We focus on Mercer when we get there. Step by step. That's how we got number 1 ranked last year. That's how we achieved things last year, and that's not gonna be different this year. Step by step. FAU first, then Stetson, and then we go to Mercer.
And that was Anderson Rosa speaking with us. Probably Bryson could go down in history, depending on how this year goes, as maybe one of the great defenders backline there, maybe underline, right? A little bit underrated, considering his position and what he has to do. Man, it'll be fun to see him at least for another year. And certainly the talent skill is there, as we mentioned earlier, being drafted where he was in the MLS, but yet passing on that to come back. Clearly he's going to make some money in his future past UCF professionally, wherever he wants to play.
I do agree with that. But Rosa's role this year, I think, is going to be extremely important, possibly even more so than last year, because if there is one group of players that has had a lot of turnover from last season, it is the backline, or at least as far as new faces go. Zane Bubb, of course, graduated after last year, and he was a major presence in that backline for this UCF team, and he is not so easily replaced. Of course, he moved on to the Tampa Bay Rowdies of the USL Championship. But Rosa will be able to, but coming back, Rosa anchoring this backline, I think is extremely important to have that leadership presence, because there's a bunch of new faces coming. There's Alex Smith, who is transferred in from fellow Sunbelt school Georgia Southern. He played quite a good amount of time with them last season. You also have Gwendel Eugene de Gorse coming from France. He played about 12 matches with Olympique Lyonnais B in last year in French football. So major talent coming from France there. Coach Calabrese, of course, always has struck quite well with international recruiting as of late. The latest example being Finland's Saku Heiskanen. You also have Gabi Velez, who is transferred in from NC State. He's a Weston native. He played about 953 minutes for the Wolfpack last season. Of course, NC State was also where AJ Seals originally came from. And then they also have Daisuke Shinko, who is a Coffeyville Community College transfer. He's a native of Japan. He's also there in the back line as well. He actually scored 6 goals last year in the community college circuit. And then, of course, you have several returners like Ron Bentacon, Timothy Arias, and Arne Michalis. So Rosa is the anchor of all of this. Second team All Sunbelt. He was named to the All Southeast Region second team. The Sunbelt coaches love him. He was the preseason Defensive Player of the Year selection. I think it's extremely clear that this backline is going to be a major force in where UCF is going to end up. And Rosa being the linchpin of that, I think, is the key to it, and to kind of help this group gel together, as it's the one that has the most new faces among them.
Yeah, well, I was interested. I thought what really struck me was that Rosa and Coach Calabrese, we both, we talked to him about both of them about the defense. I thought there'd be more questions there, especially losing Zane Bubb, who's an all-conference player and playing professionally now. And yet, Bryson, it struck me that there's a confidence there about the back line there, that they feel that it's just as strong, it's deeper. They feel, Coach Calabrese even referenced it. Were you surprised by some of that? That was interesting. They feel pretty confident. I think that's a key. When they were healthy last year, with Juanvi Munoz, another experienced goalkeeper, another year under his belt, defensively, they were on pace last year for most of the year to have the best defensive season in UCF men's soccer in the Calabrese era. They kind of limped in their last couple of matches. I remember Coach Calabrese, I think, alluded to some injuries and things like that. Do they have enough depth? Were you, as Calabrese and certainly Rosa, seem to be not too concerned about what they feel pretty confident, in other words, what they have there?
I think so, honestly. Like, let's think about it like this. So of all the defenders, every single one of them, except for one, got collegiate soccer experience last year. The only one that didn't, Dourado, played in the 5th tier of French football. So it's not like he wasn't doing, he was just playing in high school. He was playing technically professionally, if you want to say technically. So I think this is a very experienced backline. Of course, Timothy Arias, by the way, he started all 14 matches he played in last year, played over 1,000 minutes. So like he was on the pitch a lot, even if Anderson Rosa and Zane Bubb were probably the two that were getting the most, I would say, attention as it were. And you also have the fact that you have Arne as well. I mean, he played 500 minutes, so that's a good depth piece to have. Gabi Velez, 953 minutes last year with NC State. And he's just a sophomore. That was in his freshman year that he had with NC State. So and then of course you have the long experience of Alex Smith, who was a starter for Georgia Southern last year. This is a team that is very experienced playing the back line. And so I think honestly think no matter who you throw in on the back line, they're going to at least be competent. And so if there is an injury of some kind, then they can just turn it in. I mean, defenders usually get subbed in and out quite often. So it's not like it's like, oh, there's a sub out, there's an issue. But I think that you can basically slot anyone in to this UCF backline, and you're going to have a solid defense. And I think that's the aim that Coach Calabrese was going for when he was hitting the transfer portal and the international circuit to replenish that position group.
Let's talk about the other big question that at least I have, Bryson, and that's in the midfield. The Knights lost a tremendous talent in Saku Heiskanen out of Finland. He turned pro. I know some people right now are listening like, wait a minute, wasn't he a freshman? We'll have Bryson explain that in a moment, Bryson. But what's your thoughts there on the midfield for UCF, on the loss of Saku, as you explain why he was able to turn pro so quickly, and what the Knights have in the midfield?
Well, the biggest thing with the world of soccer is that, is just because there is not, college isn't the only way that soccer players can rise to the top of their profession. There's also like academies, and in Europe, of course, they have lower tier soccer leagues. So of course, college isn't a thing for them there. So Saku, for example, was playing in a lower tier of Finnish soccer before coming to UCF, but he was able to have collegiate eligibility because, the NCAA sort of determines how many years of eligibility you can have depending on your previous experience. That's why, of course, like I mentioned with Dourado from France is able to come here from France and play as a freshman. Juanvi Munoz is in a similar position coming from Spain. So with Saku, he ended up getting the option from a premier Finland soccer club named IF Nistan, which is a suburb of Helsinki, the country's capital. He got an offer to play for them professionally, and like anyone that would get such an offer probably would, he took that. I mean, he was already playing soccer in Finland before coming here, so the fact that his play this year could help him get an offer. I mean, of course, you go and take that, and we've seen like professional soccer players quite young, so you can make it to the top flight of professional soccer at any age. The thing is, though, is now Saku has turned pro, which means that his eligibility for NCAA soccer is now basically gone. But at the same time, he's doing what he loves in his home country. I don't think anyone can fault him for going in the direction that he did. And he's been getting a lot of playing time with that club, by the way. I actually recap what he's been doing so far in the 2024 season in my men's soccer preview, which you can read on the blackandgoldbanneret.com. Bing! Now, as for the midfield that he leaves behind, it's not as deep as the midfield is, but I don't think it necessarily has to be. They already have Ousmane Ba coming back. The Senegalese native played 18 minutes last year, but he's a senior. I've heard some great things out of him. Giannis Bellatrosh, who was another freshman.
He's a key guy. Yeah, he's explosive.
I feel like Bellatrosh, because of how big Saku ended up being, I felt like Bellatrosh went really underrated last year. I mean, he played over 1,000 minutes. He even got a couple of goals too. So he's from France, by the way. I think Bellatrosh might end up becoming the new key to the midfield, but he also has a couple of other international players coming in to kind of help supplement them. There's Sora Funakoshi, who's another Japanese native who's coming over from Cowley College, where he was actually an NGCAA first-team All-American last year, Eric Lopez. He ended up starting all 21 matches he played and scored 12 goals. Now, this is the community college level, mind you, but it's not like he doesn't have any talent at all. It's clear that this guy can play. You also have coming from Spain, you have Javier Lopez Sanchez. He's listed as a senior, but he did play last year in the 5th tier of Spanish soccer with UCAM Murcia B. He played almost 2,000 minutes for that club, by the way. So if you want to know why Javier Lopez Sanchez is listed as a senior, it's because this dude was already playing quite a lot in the Spanish soccer circuit. So the NCAA just kind of determined to give him this year of he's a senior coming to UCF. But as you can see, that's an experienced dude right there. He was playing at the fifth tier of Spanish soccer for like 2,000 minutes. So you have him, you have Sora, you have Giannis, you have Ba coming in the senior year, you have Itai Levisman. He redshirted last year. He's a sophomore from Israel. He'll be there as a depth piece. And they also have a redshirt freshman named Drew Hansen, who redshirted last year and will be able to serve as depth as well. And they also have Jonas Fritschi from Germany, who's playing in his 5th year. He played 516 minutes last year. He's actually both a midfielder and a defender. But given that given the depth that the defenders already have, I would see him playing more as a midfield that could kind of come back and defend if they need an extra defender on the court, almost like an audible, as it were. Like Jonas can kind of audible to play defender if they need an extra one there. So I'm quite interested in this midfield. Yes, there's no Saku, and I think Saku was sort of like a lightning in a bottle kind of moment that Calabrese was able to get. But it's clear that Calabrese went into the international, the transfer portal and international, recruiting circles to find someone that can kind of maybe not replace Saku, but be able to do what Saku was essentially able to do, just in maybe a different fashion, to help pair somebody with Giannis Bellatrosh. So I quite like what I see from this midfield, but I will be interested to see what Javier and Sora will be able to bring to the picture, because Bellatrosh is, I would say, the only really known quantity returning in this midfield. So Bellatrosh, though, is going to be very key.
And he's exciting to watch too when he's got the ball in possession very quick, and certainly one of the responsibilities that he and many of the midfielders will have this season is feed the ball to some of the talented forwards that UCF has, including one of the best in the country and perhaps one of the greatest in UCF men's soccer history. When we return here on Night Shift, we'll preview the forwards and we'll hear from Lucca Dourado in his final year as he moves up the record books. Bryce and I will discuss, is Lucca Dourado on the Mount Rushmore of the UCF greatest offensive players in men's soccer? Plus, we'll break down this incredible schedule that men's soccer has this upcoming year. And are they the best team on campus in the fall? Even better than the other football team? Bryson and I will discuss that and much more as you're listening to Night Shift.
For all the latest news and analysis from every UCF sport, visit blackandgoldbanneret.com, your home for the UCF Knights on SB Nation. We bring you all the latest news and in-depth analysis from across Knight Nation, from football and hoops to golf and tennis. If you want to stay on top of all things UCF, visit blackandgoldbanneret.com, powered by SB Nation.
And welcome back to this edition of Night Shift. Of course, certainly one of the big storylines in UCF men's soccer and of UCF athletics in 2024-2025 is Lucca Dourado playing his final year at UCF men's soccer. And as he looks up to move up the goal scorer, he has had an historic career. Came into UCF, won a conference championship, and got to the Sweet 16 in his freshman year. He's hoping to cap off his Knights career with a trophy and another run in the deep of the postseason. Back on Media Day, Lucca Dourado had to talk about coming back to UCF and talk to us as well about what's ahead for him and UCF this year. Here is Lucca Dourado.
How does it feel to be back here for one last ride?
Very happy, as Anderson said. Very grateful for this opportunity that the coaches are giving to me again, being able to come back and give more to UCF, it means a lot to me, so it's good.
What brought you back for one last go-around?
The same as Anderson said, wanted to give more, wanted to win one last ride for us. We want to leave here good, and happy and winning trophies. I think that was one of the biggest thoughts on my mind to come back.
What's it?
Anderson talked about your guys' relationship for not even only at here, but for the last 6 years. What have you seen from him and his growth?
Oh, a lot. He has improved a lot, as everybody. We see him. I see him every day in practice, and we train together. I know his strengths. He knows mine. So I think it's good that every day we're pushing each other. At the end of the practice, hey, you didn't do well. You got to do well on this. So I think it's good to have this partnership along the way.
What's the difference between 2023 Lucca Dourado versus 2024 Lucca Dourado?
Same guy, just different mentality. Just I want to win. That's what we're here for. That's what Scott Calabrese brought me here for. To win trophies, to win, and I think that's Lucca.
Anderson talked about, for him the difference is like that hunger. I mean, after getting number 1 ranked last year, the way the season ended, you got a majority of your schedule against teams that made the NCAA tournament. Did you feel that same hunger?
Yes, of course, as we all should. That's part of soccer. We have now a good conference. We're gonna play against a lot of good teams, ranked teams. So I think that makes us even hungry. We want to win against those teams. We want to go higher. We want to show everybody that 19 is not for us. We want to be top.
Lucca, how close is this program to where you want to lead it?
Pardon?
How close is this program right now to the place where you want to lead it?
Very close. I think the way the coaches gives us the practice and everything we do, I think it's the next level. I think it's like a professional team's practice. Everything we do, it's professional. There's not one thing that we do that it's not unprofessional. Everything we do in the gym, outside of the field, on the field, everything is professional. So I think that's good to have that, and because when we get to the next level, we know how it is and how we do it.
You bring a lot of attention when you're on the pitch from defenders, which creates opportunities for your teammates. Who are some of the teammates that the fans should look for that will help you as far as the offensive scoring?
For sure. I think we have a great guys. For sure, Clarence and Emmanuel Baum, those guys, they were playing with me last year. I think I'm really looking forward to them so they can score more as well with me, So, but we also have new guys, Pui, Malang, Soda. They can also play in the wing. So I think I'm excited to see them as well.
As far as this group of forwards, the only new face, at least in terms of forward, is freshman Carlos Ross from Lake Nona. Everybody else with the forwards group was here last year. What is it about this group of forwards that kind of lets Coach Bradley's maybe leave it alone? These are the guys.
No, I don't. I think everybody will be able to play. I think everybody's good enough. If you're here, you're good enough to play, to be a starter, So I think everybody can push each other. Carlos arrived. He's going to push me. I'm going to push him. And the same with Clarence and Baum. Pui and Malunga, they're there. They want to play. They're not here just to mess around. They're here to play as well and win trophies with UCF. But we just gotta have a good mentality and good focus to continue playing.
You talk about leaving UCF at a good place. What piece of advice have you given to players that are going to be around longer from your experience here?
Just take every game as your final. You never know what could happen. I spent my 4 years here at UCF, being happy since the first day I arrived here. So I think that's what it helped me a lot during my 4 years, and just to be happy every day, go to practice with a smile on your face, and looking forward to the last game, which is with a trophy in our hands.
I talked to Cal Jennings recently. He's obviously having a great year in Tampa there in the USO. And he said that he watches you play. You two have kind of talked and share similarities from the goal scoring and how you both they appreciate the system that your coaches have that shows off your skills. Just talk about Cal, do you follow Cal, what he's doing? Do you pick his brain? And talk about that system that you play in that allows you to flourish.
For sure. Cal was, of course, he's a legend here at UCF. Before I signed here, the coaches were already talking to me of how Cal plays and how I'm gonna fit in the system that they put for the strikers and everything. So watching him playing, I think he was awesome. He scored a lot of goals. I still follow him in Tampa. He's doing great. He's a great forward. Always look up to him. And we have some similarities. We like to score goals, of course, and having the same ability to do all the things that they coach us to do. I think that's good to keep the strike momentum going.
You entered the season with 37 career goals, 9 back of Cal's career total, which is the 4th most in UCF history. What does it mean to you? Do you feel the need to try and chase him down, or over the season? How do you feel going into this year in terms of the legacy you leave behind?
I mean, I wanna do Lucca Dourado. I wanna be myself. I wanna do it for myself, not to pass anyone. Everybody made their own legacy, and I wanna leave mine here as well. So I don't think I want to just think of that. I have to pass Cal. No, I have to do it for myself as well.
You mentioned you play for trophies. I know that's the one thing did it feel a little empty last year? As great successes you had, is that part of also the motivation coming back
for sure,
to finish off what you came in, you won a trophy, now you want to finish off with a trophy?
For sure. I think that's something that we all missing. Even the coaches, we talk all the time. This is something we're missing. I think you guys gonna see something good this year.
We talked about this with Anderson. I want to ask you about this as well. What has it been like to play with Anderson, not just of course this year, but of course being from him being one of your fellow countrymen, and being the Brazilian community here in Orlando being what it is?
Just very grateful, just have this partnership that we have for 6 years. It's hard to find those partnerships when you're playing soccer. Sometimes you move away, but having this partnership, I mean, it's very good. I'm very grateful for it. He helps me out every day in everything we do. It's not just on the field, but off the field. So I think it's very good.
Speaking about Brazil, how excited are you for Saturday?
No, I mean, I'm not really watching the Olympics, but I'm sure Marta left her legacy around the soccer world. So I think it will be good. Yeah.
What is the biggest thing you think this team needs to do between now and the kickoff of the first match against Mercer?
Just focus, just keep training as we're doing, and just get ready for Saturday. It's our first game. We gotta be able to put the work we have been putting the whole summer. So I think everybody's ready. Everybody's committed. So yeah.
All right, that was Lucca Dourado there from Media Day. All right, Bryson, let's talk about about Lucca here. You've got the numbers in front of you. What are we set up to see this year from Lucca Dourado in his final year in the black and gold?
Honestly, it's very interesting to look at Lucca Dourado from a statistical standpoint. Of course, his true freshman season started fairly all right with 4 goals and 1 assist, but then he just broke out in 2021 and 2022, 13 goals in 21 and then 11 goals in 2022. I mean, 2022 was just an amazing year for him, where he actually had a 500 shot on goal percentage. He was just lightning that year. Last season, comparatively, the comparative was actually a bit of a down year for him. 9 goals, 3 assists. His shot percentage was 161, which is lower than 21 and 22. He also had a lower shot on goal percentage, but at the same time, he's going up against some of the best teams in the country while doing this, going up against the likes of Kentucky, West Virginia, Marshall, James Madison, who made the NCAA tournament, FIU. So I would argue that this is more a product of the defenses that Lucca was going up against more so than Lucca himself, and he was still able to lead the team in goals. He has been the clear striker every single season that he's been here under Coach Calabrese, and I feel like this is sort of Calabrese's style. He seems like a guy to really funnel the ball to usually one person, at least a lot of the time. We had that with Cal Jennings before Lucca, and now we have Lucca here. I think the biggest difference, honestly, between somebody like Cal and somebody like Lucca, though, is Lucca. It comes from Brazil, and I think being in Orlando specifically, Anderson Rosa, by the way, has this too. He's a fellow Brazilian like Lucca. Is that Orlando has a very deep Brazilian community, and I think that that's why this team almost has this sort of different vibe, because you go to a UCF men's soccer match, it is not like a women's match at all. There is a major difference in vibe, even though it's the exact same. It's the exact same venue, and I think it's from the contributions of people like Anderson and Lucca to kind of the atmosphere of the team that sort of does that. And Lucca really spearheads, I would say, the success of all of that. If he and Lucca are like the dynamic duo, Lucca's more of the public facing one, while Anderson is the guy that does the dirty work behind the scenes. But Lucca is looking to continue to vault himself.
I was going to say, where is he right now? Because he's got some milestones coming up here, doesn't he?
Yes, he does. So as of right now, Lucca's career goal number count sits at 37, which is the 6th most in UCF history. He is only 2 goals behind UCF Athletics Hall of Famer Ronnie Francois, who played from 1980 to 1983. But I think the big number that people might want to look for the magic number is going to be 9, because that's how many goals it's going to take to tie Cal Jennings, who ended his UCF career in 2019 with 46 total goals. And he is, I would say, he has the most goals in modern UCF soccer history, at least in the 21st century. Anyway, he's, by the way, 1 goal ahead of him, actually in 3rd in UCF history, was Ari Nurmai, who played from 96 to 99 with 47 goals. Now, he's not going to reach Randy DeShield. He finished his career with 56 goals. I don't think he's going to get that much, but I would say the ceiling for Lucca is if he can get enough goals, he could finish in or a tie for 3rd in UCF soccer history. I think that's a pretty good ceiling for him, but I would say that tying Cal or beating Cal, that I think is the big thing that we can watch with Lucca in terms of goals. You also have points, by the way. The way points works in soccer, by the way, is a goal counts as 2, I believe it's 2, and then an assist counts as 1 point. So compiling all this, Lucca Dourado actually sits 7th in program history in points, just 2 behind Matias Paisalo, who played from 2014 to 2017. Cal Jennings ended his career with 107 points. So he's going to need quite a few goals in order to get himself up to that height. But it'll be interesting to see what he can do as far as points. I think if he can reach the top 5 in points, that would be a pretty good ceiling for him to get. I think maybe he could probably get as high as 4th. But I think this year is the big one. Lucca's looking to put an exclamation point on his career. I don't think he's paying attention too much to the records. I mean, obviously he came in right after Cal. And like Anderson, he's also looking for trophies that the team didn't get last year. Of course, he wants to finish with a conference title and a deep NCAA tournament run, if at all possible. But in terms of evaluating the impact that he had on the program, this is where you kind of look for that sort of stuff. And he can really put an exclamation point on his UCF legacy if he is able to mirror that of Cal Jennings.
And it was funny, earlier this summer, me and our old friend Nick Porcelli actually interviewed Cal Jennings, who's playing for the Rowdies, having an incredible year again in the USL. And one of the things we talked about with Cal was Lucca Dourado. And I asked, obviously, Lucca, as you heard in the interview, about Cal. There's a lot of similarities there and so forth. Let me ask you this before we move on to the next other players in that spot. As of today, Bryson, going into this season, do you have Lucca Dourado in your personal Mount Rushmore of all time, UCF men's soccer's greatest offensive players of all time, or is he still on the outside looking in? Is it dependent on this year?
So, let's go ahead. Well, let's look at the rankings. So, number one, I think the undisputed one that you cannot leave without is Heikki Ritvanen. The guy scored 88 goals over his career from 1996 to 1999. Now, grant you, they were playing more matches then, so it's a little bit apples and oranges, but still, 88 goals is quite a lot. 188 points, by the way. He got 12 assists over his career as well. I don't think anyone's beating that. Getting a fifth year because of COVID would be the only way anybody could probably get close to that. And now that the COVID years are kind of starting to fizzle out, now that we've reached 2024, I don't think anyone's beating that. There's also Randy DeShield. I think Randy DeShield is a good representative of kind of the OG days of UCF men's soccer. He finished his career with 56 goals and 14 assists, played in the late 70s. So I think he's a very good representative of that as well. I think I'm also going to put Cal Jennings here because he's a good representative of the modern era of UCF athletics. 46 goals, 15 assists. Then I think this is where I think is going to be interesting because interesting. So as of right now, I actually would put Ari Nurmai as my number 4, and the reason for that is because he not only has the third most goals in UCF soccer history with 47, he also has the second most assists in soccer history with 28. He not only could score, he could help others score too. So in fact, because of that, he actually has more points than Cal Jennings does. So he is number 3 in UCF history in points. So as of right now, I would put Ritvanen, DeShield, Nurmai, and Cal as my Mount Rushmore of UCF soccer forwards. But so I think it's going to depend on what Lucca does this year if he gets on that. Now, who he replaces, it's either going to be Cal or Ari. I think it's really going to depend on when you look at and compare Cal and Lucca's legacy. I think I could honestly see a bit of maybe a debate on who is the best UCF striker of the Calabrese era between Cal and Lucca. I'm sure they wouldn't have that, but I think that once it's all said and done, both of them, I think, are perfect representatives of scorers in the modern era of UCF men's soccer. So it's going to depend on this year, but I would put Cal Jennings in the Mount Rushmore ahead of Lucca for now.
All right, so I agree. I have Cal as well as on my Mount Rushmore. I have a lot higher than you have. We actually have Cal ranked in the top 20 UCF top 100 male athletes that we did at Black and Gold Banneret back in 2023. Heikki Ritvanen as well. I think those are 2 locks for Mount Rushmore. After that's interesting. I have Ronnie Francois in my Mount Rushmore. Remember?
Okay.
Ronnie Francois is in the UCF Athletics Hall of Fame.
That he is.
And people that have talked to Winston DeBose about it, I've talked to some people, like he was a tremendous, exciting player, explosive, fun to watch. I didn't see him play, obviously, but just based on what people said. Explosive, talented player. So I actually have Ronnie Francois right now in my Mount Rushmore. And then in my 4th one, plus I have Francois representing the 80s. Rick represents the 90s. Jennings, the more recent time. And then I went with DeShield because he was the best. It looked like put up the numbers in the late 70s.
Yeah.
Era.
Yeah. So I guess the big difference with us.
I have Nurmai and Lucca on the outside looking in. But I could say they're top 6. If we did a top 6 rankings, kind of like the old college football playoff back in when they were doing the top 4 unreveal, that would be my top 6 offensive talented players that can put the ball in the net. I do think this year could change that for Lucca. Remember, you know me, I'm very stickler. I like to wait till the last chapter is written. Remember even McKenna Melville, where you were kind of already claiming her, you and Jeff were like, hey, she's the greatest volleyball player ever. And I'm like, whoa. Let me see those senior year out of respect to Tyra Harper and Menchikova and the other players. And then she had maybe her best year yet, McKenna did, in her final year. And then I'm like, all right, she's good. She's the queen of the court in UCF volleyball history. That's kind of how I feel, Bryson, about Lucca. I'll say this, with my own eyes, him and Cal are the 2 best goal scorers I've ever seen at UCF. And I've been following UCF soccer for, we're going on near 20 years now. But now, in fairness, I didn't see the Francois, the guys from the 70s and the 80s. Haji Berry's another one was a good one as well. But I think if Dourado has a monster year, remember, Cal was an All-American in his last year, and he's got the single season goal records and everything like that. But if Dourado could have another close to, or if not a All-American type year, that certainly makes a strong case to be in the top 4 of that Mount Rushmore.
This is what's really interesting when I look at Lucca Dourado and Cal Jennings together. Cal really reached as high as he did because he had 2 really great seasons in 2018 and 2019, where those are some of the greatest single-season goal-scoring performances in UCF history right there. Lucca, though, Lucca's not even in the top 10 in any of his seasons, and yet he's still there. He's within striking distance of Cal in his last year. Now, could you say it's because of his 5th year? Sure, you could probably say that. But I think that even if he's in striking distance at all, is quite a feat to behold. I will buy with Ronnie Francois with what you're saying. He did help them with in the NCAA Division II days. My only defense with Ari Nurmai is that he was on the same teams with Heikki Ritvanen, and he was still able to do what he did.
Wow, we gotta investigate that era. Like, was no defense being played? Like, what? How is it that these numbers? Did they play more games? Like, it's kind of
they were playing more games back then. They were.
All right, good. I'm glad you figured. I mean, let's keep that. But no, look, it's all very great players. Cal, by the way, the most significant goal, arguably in the history of UCF soccer, the golden goal against Missouri State in the round of 32 in the 2019 NCAA tournament to send UCF to the Sweet 16 for the first time in program history. That was Cal Jennings' last kick at home at UCF of his career. That's legendary stuff. Maybe Lucca will have some of that this year.
I think Lucca honestly think Lucca needs a moment like that. Like, that's one thing I feel like that Cal has that Lucca doesn't, is that sort of thing. Because Lucca, remember that 2020 that spring 2021 year where they reached the Sweet 16. That was Lucca's freshman year, where he only had 4 goals and 1 assist. He wasn't really fully formed quite yet in that year, and ever since then, the 2 years since, the UCF did not make it back to the NCAA tournament. They did it in 21, and they didn't do it in 22. They did it last year, but of course, you have the kind of the bittersweet taste of the 3 straight losses to end the year. So Lucca doesn't really have, I would say, that same really legacy defining moment that Cal has. And I think this is the year where he can do that, And I think if he can have a moment like that, maybe say in their matchup against Marshall or Kentucky, or they win a Sun Belt tournament, I think that right there would definitively say, like, Lucca very well could be better than Cal, especially considering that I would argue that the Sun Belt, at least at the top of the league, might have been harder than that American, at least in terms of the number of teams that have a very distinct style.
That year they had a top 10 SMU team. They got 4 or 5 into the field. So we'll see. Got to let it play out. Obviously the one person that can answer this question, he won't answer it, okay? But the one person that's qualified to answer this is Scott Calabrese, which both of this guy. Now, let me ask you this, Bill. But for Lucca to have opportunities though this year, he's going to need help from his other forwards. So let's talk about that because they're going to bring a lot of attention to him. So he'll need some other guys to help him scoring. It can't just be Lucca. So tell us a little bit about the rest of the forwards and who Lucca is playing alongside.
So there isn't actually a lot of change this year in the forwards. The only new face in the forwards this year is a true freshman from Lake Nona High School by the name of Carlos Rojas. So he's the only new face in this group of forwards. So we're gonna for example, Clarence Aoudor is gonna come back. He was the Sun Belt newcomer of the year last year after transferring from Oregon State.
I like him. He was an all-conference pack performer at Oregon State. Could have scored more goals last year. He had so many opportunities. It seemed like Bryson, every match he would have this opportunity. We're like, oh, he keeps so close. I wonder if he's a guy in his second year now, maybe a little more comfortable at UCF. Remember, he went from the West Coast of Oregon to Florida. There's a big transition there. I wonder if now in a second year under his belt here, comfortable, maybe he kind of explodes. He was good last year, like you mentioned, but I think there's even more upside there from him.
Well, here's the thing is that I actually think that in a way he was sort of splitting a little bit of time as kind of the other forwards with Emmanuel Baum, because both Baum and Aoudor had 4 goals and 4 assists. They mirrored each other, Eric. The difference, though, is that Baum did all of this in just 784 minutes. He played way less amount of time than Clarence Aoudor did last year, and he still put up the same stats that Clarence did. Baum, I think, is going to be very interesting to watch. He's been here a while. He's a senior. He has been right with Lucca for quite a while. I think those three together form a very good, kind of, I would argue, starting rotation in a way as at the forwards. Like you pull one and then you have the other two play, then you pull them and that sort of stuff. If it was just those three, I think those three are it's one of the reasons why UCF, I would argue, it was one of the best offensive teams last year, because they were really good. They were really good offensively last year, even if as a team, they were very good offensively. Now, behind them, you have Joey Mueller, who is a redshirt sophomore. He played about 78 minutes last year, so he got some time. I mentioned Rojas. Fabio Guerreiro, he's from Portugal. He's a forward and a midfielder. He got a little bit of time last year, so he'll be an interesting depth piece to watch if he'll be playing more up from the midfield a little bit. If he's when he's on the court, on the pitch. You have a couple of Senegalese forwards. Mohamed Poye, he played 29 minutes last year as a sophomore, and then you have Malang Mandiang, who redshirted last year. So you have some good depth pieces there that Calabrese is able to draw from, but I really think that he's I think he's going to rely on what worked for this UCF team last year.
Yeah, I think it's going to be Lucca,
Dourado, Aoudor, and Baum.
Yeah.
I think it's those three.
I agree, 100% on that. Let's talk quick. You were at the exhibition recently. We spoke in the women's soccer preview about the big question being the goalkeeping position. I don't get that sense this year with Juanvi Munoz back. How does Juanvi look? You saw him in the exhibition, and what else stood out to you from the exhibition before we get into the meat of the schedule here?
I think what really stood out to me, now they play a different format actually in this exhibition than the women's soccer. Women's soccer played, I would say, a normal game in the exhibition. Yeah, men did not do that. What happened with the men is they actually played 4 periods, a 45-minute period, a 25-minute period, then another 45-minute period, and then another 25-minute period.
Well, and that's not surprising, because a lot of times you want to get much players into the game. You want to get, try a lot of different stuff. So that's not really abnormal in exhibition. Some teams tend to do that.
Oh yeah, no, Calabrese said as much. He wanted to get as many get as many people on the pitch as possible for them to kind of see what they're doing. But what struck me is a lot of, I would argue, the biggest depth pieces on the team, at least to me when I was watching, they came out in the last 25 minutes. UCF scored 2 goals in those 25 minutes. They beat Stetson 4-0. So what really strikes me with that is that UCF's depth was definitely much better than Stetson's depth. And I think that's going to be the key when you get into the kind of the late goings of games and seasons is how good is your depth going to be. And I think at least for the exhibition to me, I think UCF's depth was quite well done. And that goes, by the way, for the goalkeepers. Juanvi Munoz, they shut out Stetson, by the way. All 4 goalkeepers did a really great job shutting down Stetson's offense during that exhibition. Juanvi Munoz, of course, is a junior, but he has 3 young goalkeepers behind him. You have Pablo Osabel and Shane Wright, who both redshirted last year. And then you have Timo Habak, who's coming from Germany. He actually played in the 4th tier of German football last year. So I would say Juanvi's now an upperclassman now. So I think that there is that little kind of like, what is next at the goalkeeper following him? That's when you start asking those kinds of questions. And so this is a year that Juanvi, of course, is going to try to cement himself, because Juanvi's been quietly having a actually very good UCF career at the net. Overall, he had a very similar year last year to what he did in saves. He had 48 saves as a true freshman, and then 47 in 2023, 95 saves over his career. And when you look at UCF history, that's actually bubbling right under the top 10. He is really, let me see. Yeah, right here. He has 95 career saves. Top 13, the 13th most saves in UCF history is Luciofi with 111. So
that's Hall of Famer, Louis Trophy.
That he is. So, and he played 2 seasons. Now he played 2 seasons, so that's a little bit different. But if he ends up having another relatively like high 40s in saves, he could actually get to, doing some mental math here. I would say he could actually get to almost the top 10. He could get really close to the top 10.
Well, that's possible because obviously a Coach Vintage Calabrese team, they're going to play up and down. They like to play open. Sometimes that creates some opportunities for the opponent offensively. And so the goalie has to make more saves. But we'll see.
But yeah, Juanvi, I think, is clearly, like, we talked about how the goalkeeper in both the men's and the women's is a very decorated position at UCF Athletics. And I think Juanvi has clearly asserted himself as worthy of the mantle. I wouldn't say he's like a Yannick Ertl or Winston DeVos or anything like that, but he is doing a very good job at what he's been doing. And then behind him, I actually got to see Shane Wright play over the summer. He played for USL2 club Nona FC, and he got to start a lot for that club. And I quite like what I saw from given his age. So if Juanvi were to go down for whatever reason, I think there's some solid depth behind them, even if it is inexperienced depth at the position. So goalkeeping, I think, is looking very well. And from what I saw in the exhibition, I think this team has very strong depth to it, which is going to be very key when you get into this gauntlet of a schedule that Scott Calabrese has put together.
Well, let's get into that. They open up against Mercer on opening night, a team that won their conference last year, made the NCAA tournament. They will host Seattle, who's in the top 25 preseason poll. Hello, on the 25th of August. The one that I've got circled, August 31st. When Wake Forest in the top 15 in the polls comes in. Wake Forest, the winningest men's soccer program in the last decade. Bryson, I can arguably make this case from a non-conference game standpoint. To me, this is the biggest non-conference UCF men's soccer game in program history. That's how good Wake Forest is. This is a blockbuster on the 31st.
Well, you didn't even mention the fact that this also includes the Big West tournament champion, UC Irvine. And, oh, yeah, they're going to FIU. And, FIU has always been a tough out for this squad. Every single non-conference opponent, bar one, USF, who's coming here on September 15th, made the NCAA tournament last year. This is a...
South Florida, I just saw, was picked 4th in the American. I mean, they're always scrappy. They're always a borderline NCAA tournament team. They weren't last year. They were a couple years ago, but they're still pretty good.
Oh, yeah. No, they're not too shabby of an out, but Wake Forest is obviously the linchpin in all of this. This is the return trip, by the way. UCF went up to Winston-Salem to play UCF to open their 2022 season, which, by the way, they only lost that match 1-0. So it wasn't like they were like completely out of that matchup.
No doubt.
On the road.
No doubt.
So now Wake Forest is coming here. So
well, think about this. Think about this if you're a season ticket holder. I mean, right now, I would argue, get your season tickets if you're a UCF men's side. They had record attendance last year. Season average was the best in program history. They had some big single game record attendance. You got to cover them, Bryson, against West Virginia and James Madison, a couple of them that I think are top 5 attended men's soccer games of all time. But think about this. You got Wake Forest, top 20, top 15 team in the country. You got Marshall is in the ranked in the top 10, top 15 rankings. They're going to be coming down to Orlando later this year to play UCF in the Sun Belt game, conference game. That's another ranked team. I mean, my goodness. We're not even talking about UCF going on the road to Morgantown against the Mountaineers, a team that went to the College Cup last year. This is as stacked of a schedule as we've ever seen in UCF men's soccer. It is high level.
And what's crazy, they don't even have to leave the state of Florida in the non-conference slate. I mean, this schedule, I would say, is an athletic director's dream right here. They're playing literally all but one of their non-conference games at home, and then the one away match is still in state against a really good opponent in that of FIU. And that doesn't even mention the Sun Belt slate. Of course, they're kicking it off with James Madison this time. So that'll be interesting to see if they can kind of get some vengeance from that Halloween night matchup from last year. West Virginia, I mean, the Big 12 championship, men's soccer championship is going to be a great matchup as always. That was a great game to watch last year here. So it'll be interesting to see what'll happen in Morgantown. But Marshall. Oh, Marshall. Remember, they won the NCAA championship a few years ago, and they were a penalty call away from drawing it at home. I still remember Zane Bubb tackling it away from Marshall's goalkeeper and passing it to Seals to get the score. It was ruled an illegal sliding tackle, which is why the goal didn't count. But man, that was like some of the most creative soccer play calling I'd ever watched. So to see Marshall come down here for that's going to be a great matchup to watch. And it's going to be coming directly 6 days after they went to Morgantown to play West Virginia. They're playing West Virginia and Marshall, 2 top 10 preseason ranked teams, back to back. That is going to be a very interesting task for this team to handle.
We saw this last year, though. Remember at one point last year in the polls, I want to say it was in October, UCF, Marshall, West Virginia were all in the top 5 in the country.
Yeah, I mean,
it'll be interesting. Can they duplicate that in year 2 of the Sun Belt? Because I think everybody would agree year 1 of the Sun Belt was a massive success for the Sun Belt in its return to endorsing men's soccer.
Oh, absolutely. The big thing with the Sun Belt is that I would say the top half of the conference all are threats to win the national championship. And that one school, by the way, that I haven't mentioned yet in the Sun Belt is Kentucky. Make no mistake. Kentucky is a very good men's soccer program. Last year was an inordinately down year for them, and yet they still made the NCAA tournament. They made it to the second round too, and they just ended up losing to a number 2 seed Notre Dame.
KMU was a tournament team.
Yep.
And South Carolina, we saw it unfortunately at UCF's expense. They're usually better than what they showed last year, and they showed that when they upset UCF in the conference tournament. So, I mean, it is potentially – I know when they recreated the Sun Belt, they were hoping – with the goal of being maybe the second best conference in college soccer behind the ACC, which is a superpower in men's soccer. And you look at it, Bryce, remember the Pac-12 is gone now. It's gone. I think a strong argument could be that they're right, that the Sun Belt might be the second best conference going into this year behind the ACC in men's soccer. We'll see how the RPIs and the metrics all play that out, but they're in a power league.
Well, here's what I'll say. The top 5 of the conference are like all extremely good. That is, of course, Marshall, West Virginia, James Madison, Kentucky, and UCF. The top half of the league, I think, is like year in, year out NCAA tournament contenders. The bottom half of the conference, though, I would argue is a little bit lower. South Carolina, sure, they might have had an inordinately bad year. They were 94th in the RPI. But then you also have Coastal Carolina, Georgia Southern, Old Dominion, who can kind of play spoiler sometimes. And the thing with last year is that after UCF had that double whammy of West Virginia and Marshall last season, they had, I would argue, relatively easy street in terms of opponents from a non-conference standpoint to finish out the year. That's why I was really nervous seeing that happen last year. When I went into that James Madison game after seeing what I saw over those past few years against the bottom half of the conference teams, I was like, oh man, if this is a time for a trap game, now's the time. And I'm seeing that again this time around, where the second half of the schedule, of the Sun Belt schedule, is kind of filled with these teams that are a little lower on the RPI. At least that's where they finished last year. Keep this in mind, Eric. There are only 4 opponents on the UCF schedule this year that finished 100th or worse in the RPI rankings last year. 3 of them come between October 18th and November 5th, the last half of the conference schedule. That's Old Dominion, Georgia Southern, and Coastal Carolina. South Carolina, by the way, is also in this mix as well. South Carolina will be the senior night matchup on November 1st. So I feel like in a way this mirrors last schedule, but because they have last year's conference schedule under their belt, Scott Calabrese is going to have more experience. And it's like, okay, let's think about what we were doing at this point of the year last year and just make sure we're not doing that going into this bit of the season. The season. I think Kentucky is going to be a very interesting matchup. It's the penultimate home matchup.
Here as well, by the way. Kentucky comes here as well to play UCF. I mean, those two programs have a history too, from way back in the day, from when UCF was in Conference USA. On that, by the way, I want to, for those who may not be familiar with men's soccer, there is no Big 12, no SEC in men's soccer. They do not endorse men's soccer. 48 teams make the NCAA tournament in men's soccer. Top 16 get a seed. That is something that Calabrese always shoots for, why he's playing, hint, the top schedule. If you're a top 4 seed, you basically stay home all the way up until the College Cup. I'm going to give you a note here. If you're into history and some good karma, perhaps, for this year's team, okay? Because people are wondering, well, wait a minute, why should we be confident in this team the way they finished last year, right, Bryson? Go back to 2018, Scott Calabrese's second year. Lost in a conference in the tournament. They were a national seed. They ended up losing in overtime in the second round to a mid-major Lipscomb at home. Okay, sounds familiar? Kind of what we saw last year, right? National seed, ended up losing in overtime to a mid-major last year, Vermont. The following year, UCF ended up being a 9 seed, got to their first ever Sweet 16 ever, beating Missouri State in the round of 32 to get to that round of 16 I mentioned earlier with Cal Jennings scoring the goal. So my point is, that experience. I'm wondering if we're going to see a deja vu here with a team with a nucleus very similar to 2018 and 19. We had a nucleus there, maybe fell short of what they thought they would. It kind of limped in at the end. They used that experience to this and benefit the following year. This year, maybe they do the same thing, and maybe with a higher seed, because Calabrese, I wrote a column about this back in 2019 when it happened. UCF should have been a top 8 seed that year. They got screwed by the committee, and it was costly because that year UCF was placed as a 9 seed with their nemesis back then in the American, SMU, who was the 8, which means SMU got to host that Sweet 16 game. SMU knocked off UCF in overtime to get to the Elite 8. That's why that top 8 seed is important, because you get to host the top 16. And I think that's why Coach Calabrese, and you heard him earlier in the show talk about why he schedules the way he does. I think he wants to not only be a national seed, but get as high of a seed as possible, top 8, so you don't have to travel through the postseason up until the College Cup.
Well, I think that definitely helps, Eric, but also, if last year was any indication, UCF had home field advantage in all 3 of those matches they lost. So I get what you mean.
No, and that's what stings. You're absolutely correct on that. That's what stung about it, is they didn't win. And I think that's why they have a bit of a motivation there a little bit, is that they had it there. There were 45 minutes, and I wonder, they'll never admit it, I wonder if there was a bit of a balloon burst when they didn't win that Sun Belt regular season title, Bryson, when they were 45 minutes away from it. They had the lead at the half against JMU. They would have been the 1 seed in the Sun Belt tournament. I think at the time that would have projected them to still be in the mix for a top 8, top 4 seed. They lost the way they did, and then they had a quick turnaround a week later, lost to South Carolina, and then they dropped all the way down to the teens as a host, and then ran into a dangerous Vermont team. And you're right, men's soccer is a crapshoot. But I'm just saying, I think the motivation's there. That's all I'm saying, Bryce.
No, I do agree. And look, if there is one coach on this campus, there are actually a few coaches, honestly, that kind of fit this description. But I think Scott Calabrese is one of these coaches that I don't doubt on this squad, because let's remember, by the way, that this team had a losing record in 2022, and he took that and he turned that around and turned it into a team that managed to reach number 1 in the nation. He, in just 7 seasons at the helm, he has 70 wins through 7 seasons of coaching. He is already chasing the likes of chasing Bob Winch and Jim Rudy, who were the two, I would say, the two great coaches in program history. And he's only been at UCF at this point for about half as long as Jim Rudy has, and he's already on his way to chasing the all-time career records. It's going to be a couple of years before he can try to get past Bob Winch, who had 112 wins. But remember, they played more games back in the era that Bob Winch coached in. Coach Calabrese is playing in an era where they're playing less soccer games per season than they did, but he's already well on his way to becoming one of the, I would argue, the best coach that this program has ever seen. And I honestly feel like, from a coaching talent perspective, he actually might already be there. Jim Rudy kind of has that, that OG coach factor with him, but Coach Calabrese, in just 7 seasons on this program, has really made his mark so far. So if there is anyone that I would put my faith in to take this team to the I would say the promised land of an Elite 8 or better, Coach Calabrese, I think, is that guy. There's a reason that Terry Mohajer locked this coach down for extra amount of time in his contract extension. Because remember, they didn't know this university didn't know where men's soccer would end up when they left the American, because the Big 12 didn't have men's soccer. And when that happened, Coach Calabrese got extended to the 2027 season. He was the first coach to get his extension that far along, and that's like, that type of job security helps counteract potential worries about, like, hey, we're kind of not in a conference right now. And this is the reason why I think why Terry did what he did, and it's proven. I think that those dividends have been shown at this point. So, you mentioned this at the top of the show, Eric. Is UCF men's soccer the best team on campus? It's kind of ironic, really. The best team on campus could be men's soccer, and yet they're the one team that's not in the Big 12. I would say it is very close. I think Johnny Dawkins and men's basketball, at least from a talent perspective and punching up, I think that they could potentially have a run in their money at it, but I think men's soccer certainly has the case to be made that they are the best team on this campus right now. And if I were to pick any team on this campus right now to say, which of these teams do you think can win a national championship this year, I think men's soccer is the one. Now, do I think they're going to be national champion? No. The way soccer is played right now, it can be a crapshoot. So you could easily say that this team is easily a national championship contention, and then all of a sudden they get knocked out. Stuff like that just happens in collegiate soccer. But from a talent perspective, from a scheduling perspective, I think if you're looking on paper, which program has the best chance at getting to a national championship and winning it, I think it's this one. I don't know about you, but that's what I'm thinking.
I think UCF men's soccer is the best team in the fall. They're better than the football team going into this year. Baseball, men's tennis went deeper in the NCAA tournament this past year than men's soccer, but I think men's soccer returns more than those other two from the standpoint of, man, this team reached number 1. Like, as far as the peak, I know that the other sports return a good nucleus, but I'm saying from a peak standpoint, I think men's soccer has a higher peak. I think they are a College Cup contender. Again, in men's soccer, it's wide open. Anything can happen. This team was a College Cup contender last year. Just because you lose early does not mean that all of a sudden you were not a College Cup contender.
Remember, that UCF team beat Clemson in the season opener, and they went on to win the College Cup.
National title. They won the national title, to your point there. And I do think, remember, they were ranked number 1 for the first time in school history. A UCF team was ranked number 1. You got to wonder if that also took a bit of its toll as well at the end of the year, emotionally and mentally, when you have that, oh, shoot, we're now the number 1 ranked team. What do we, you're supposed to act, what do we do? I think some things happened there. I'm not saying, who knows what happens. They may not have as shiny of a win-loss record maybe as last year because of the schedule. They might be a better team later for it. So we'll see. It's going to be exciting. I will say this. Go get your tickets, especially those of you that go to Orlando City games. Please, go to UCF's better product than the Orlando City. And that'll be a lot of fun this year with UCF soccer. We got to wrap it up. We've gone long. We've got it wrong, Bryson, so we've got to go. We've been over an hour.
This is a great team.
Not over an hour. We are not done with previews. We still got one more sport to go. We got UCF volleyball on the horizon. They'll be on the road a little while. We'll talk down the road about UCF volleyball season preview. We'll talk to Jenny Maurer, UCF volleyball head coach, as well as Emily Wilson, outside hitter, Chloe Shear on the back line there defensively. Also, of course, have UCF football coverage right now. Position previews across the board. Bryson, myself, Jeff, Kyle Nash, all writing UCF football previews. Got a lot of football videos from Media Day and press conferences on the YouTube channel on there. Check that out, blackandgoldbanneret.com with the articles as well. I'll have a column on Mr. Shaquem Griffin, who was announced at the UCF football luncheon recently. He's going into the 2024 UCF Athletics Hall of Fame, rightfully so. I will make the case in the column, Bryson, why I think Shaquem Griffin is the greatest ambassador in UCF football. We'll discuss that down the road.
Hey,
another episode.
Hall of Fame content's coming.
That's right. Hall of Fame content, and we all know it's getting busier, folks. All right, this was fun, Bryson. We'll do it again. We'll meet up for a volleyball.
Let's go. And by the way, I'm also working on getting an interview with cross-country coach Brian Harmon as well. So we'll have the fall sports are coming. They already started women's soccer. Future episode we'll talk about their first matchup of the season and how that went down. But that's for another episode.
Thanks again. Thanks to Bryson Turner. I'm Eric Lopez. Hope you've enjoyed this edition of Night Shift as we preview the UCF men's soccer season. We'll talk to you from the pitch real soon.